Welcome to another episode of Otherworldly Encounters with Mike and Brian. How you doing, bud?
Doing pretty good, man. You?
No complaints. So I know that we just did a video on Sunday with Psychic Medium Gregory, but there's just a lot to unpack, and there was some things that happened behind the scenes after the episode was over that our viewers didn't get to watch, mainly because it was personal. It was really personal. But we just really want to talk about like how we felt after that episode, right?
Yeah. And for you folks that hopefully saw that or listened to it, Gregory is available through his website, helpmegregory.com. Make sure you give our podcast a like, a listen, a subscribe. We're available. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Check us out on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, get your feedback, get your personal experiences, and hopefully reach out to Gregory.
Yeah. And the last episode, I think the goal was, like 200 views and 20 likes. But then Gregory upped it to 100 likes.
Yep.
And currently where we're at 302 views and 26 likes. So we got the view goal.
There you go.
We would have had the like goal, but Gregory, threw down the gauntlet.
Yeah.
So we need more likes on that video.
Big aspirations. I'm here for it.
And don't forget to subscribe. Once we get 50 subscribers, we can start doing lives. We can start live streaming.
Yeah. And we can probably find some super interesting places to do live podcasts on the paranormal, like some funny shit and then maybe some really interesting stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We may not be like tech savvy.
No, that may not is not even a thing. We're not.
But we're pretty into it. We were pretty funny guys. Like we can find some fun places, funny places, something to just do some live stream and talk about weird shit.
100%.
Yeah. So what's your weapon I guess our weapon of choice tonight?
Well, I have dual weapons of choice because if you watched our last episode, we were located, a little to my south here. You and I were talking beforehand, and we had to move the operation to get more in the corner. I like the setup. I like the background, looking at, what things are looking at. Hopefully you guys like it. If you don't, let us know. We can switch back.
Yeah, well, let us know if you like this one better or that you like the last few better.
Yeah.
This is our office, I get. Yeah, this is our studio.
You sure?
And it's never really going to change. I'm pretty sure we're locked in here.
I really appreciate the fact that we're really close. And if I can just take a step back, the beer fridge is literally almost within arm's reach.
Yeah, let me move out of the way. Yeah, we got the beer fridge right there. Yeah, so that's actually excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get maybe just like one of those little 3-footers
It's like
between
we know
us.
what we're doing.
Yeah, almost. All right, Brian. So we tonight, I know that you got the garage beer.
To be fair, real quick, I opened a beer because it was taking too long to move stuff around, and you have OCD and had to adjust the cord. So I opened a garage beer in the interim.
Yeah, I do have OCD. And so that actually was a perfect segue into something, but I can't talk about it because we haven't even cracked our brews yet. So, but we're going to get into that because
for yourself.
Well, I know. We'll chug a lug because then we're going to get into this. All right. So as you guys watched on our last post, it just came out yesterday, I believe. We had Psychic Medium Gregory on, and during the podcast, obviously there was a lot of emotions going.
For sure.
Brian's mother passed away. How many months ago?
Late February.
And so it's still raw, as anybody who has lost a parent would understand. But that was just really like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. So he stayed for a long time afterward.
He did.
We hung out.
I had, because you stepped out as, with your wife and Katie.
Yeah.
And so I was in here with Gregory. And shit got wild. And I want you guys to understand where I was at coming into this episode. I don't want to say, I know that I at the very beginning, 15 weeks ago, matter of fact, that's how long we've been doing this. 15 weeks.
Is that what this
episode
is?
Yeah.
I mean, not tonight.
It was back in May. Yeah, so we're like 14 weeks. So a little over Marine Corps boot camp. Marine Corps boot camp plus a week. That's how long we've been doing this, and it just seems like we started yesterday.
Oh, yeah, that was episode 14.
Yeah, so
Okay, so this will be 15. This
now you made me forget where I was going with this. Oh, weird shit. Yeah, he was by myself. But before we even get into that, you made me lose track.
You're welcome.
I know we were getting ready to talk about OCD and stuff, and that was going to be a segue. But anyhow, I ended up having a one-on-one with Gregory. Oh, yeah, I was just talking about what I was going to be a skeptic. Like, I know I'm like, I call myself a tweener, right? But with this one, I was more down like the skeptic line. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
Sure.
We discussed in our podcast, we had a fantastic dinner, and Gregory was talking with your wife and Katie, and he really didn't want to talk to us much because he wanted to save it for the podcast, which was the right move, 100%.
Well, we didn't want to get into his background. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then so I drive a Jeep Wrangler, so duck. We're being ducked. That's a Jeep thing. You wouldn't understand because you don't drive that. But their shirt's made of that, bro. All right, so it's legit.
Right.
That's legit. So he handed me these ducks. And, I mean, obviously I have ducks on my dash. And I'm like, man, these kind of look familiar. So I was that guy that, I mean, gratefully accepted the ducks. I mean, it's a gift. So I'm not, it is what it is there. But I have a photo of my Jeep that I took just like a week ago because I was out at Roosters and someone set like 7 fucking ducks on my Jeep, and I put them all up in my dash. So I took a photo to make sure that he just didn't like get into my Jeep and grab 2 ducks and then come in and be like, oh, hey, like a spirit told me to give you these. Right. So that's where I was at the very beginning. Before we started the pod, like when he got here and we were doing our thing, that is where I was at. Before we even hit record, I was already trying to debunk shit. All right. So that's what we're going to start talking about here, but I need to crack a beer because
you're behind.
Yeah. And so I am going with Brewdog, the Foundation Ohio Pilsner. I believe this is one of their new ones.
Yeah.
And it has Ohio State of Mind on it. See that right there?
Well,
I don't know if you guys can see that. Ohio State
the right timing for it. We've got a football kickoff weekend this weekend. My Bowling Green Falcons tonight, 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown.
Go BG.
Whew. Unfalcon believable.
See what you did there. All right. So are we ready to kick this chicken?
Yeah.
I feel like we bounced around. That's not bad.
Good. Well, I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah. So that again, that's where I was at. Where were you at the beginning of this?
Yeah. So I came into this. I have a hard time believing in things like this, and my mind tends to go to reasoning and logic. And like, if I'm a person in that position, I'm going to ask leading questions to try to get you to some place so I can have at least a 50-50 shot of picking what you're thinking about. Or I'm going to come over and hang out. And I was thinking about it while we were eating. Like, did I have any photos or things up that he might have been able to see and recognize and be able to ask questions based off of? But we were only in the dining room, and then we came right out to the garage. So that wasn't a part of it. And for me, the other thing that I was thinking of is like, you hear names pulled out a lot of times, and that's, and he was asking us, and at least in my realm, it was Marilyn, Karen, Dale, Allie, names that meant something to me. But I'm like, what are the chances that you could just throw out names and one of the names would relate to either you or me?
Right.
Because part of Gregory's thing, and it's interesting to hear him talk about it, is he explained it as like listening to a crowd of people and you have to pick someone out. And it's the posture of picking somebody out and trying to determine what it is they're saying based on his handwriting. And we should post a picture of that on our Instagram page.
We did.
Too. Oh, did we already?
Yeah, I already posted it. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, it's like scribbling, and then every once in a while he'll write down a word. But what was fascinating is the things that he would have had no idea about. And specifically for me, the one thing he wrote down, it was before he even came, I'll have a Michelob. Like, my mom always drank Michelob Light. Like, that was the thing. You go to my parents' house and it was like, hey, you want a beer? And it was always Michelob Light. So like a very random, very specific item thrown out. I was like, God, how would you do it unless this is legit?
And so another part that when I was coming in here too was obviously I didn't set this podcast podcast up.
Yep.
But really Katie's set it up, right? Who's your wife's friend.
Yep.
But Katie doesn't really know anything about me. Your wife doesn't know anything about me other than I come over here, we do a podcast, and we drink some beer, right? So I was like, who could have he called that he may know? Like, you can't research me on Facebook or social media. I have a very small social media presence. So there's no, like, he doesn't know any of the people I know, and you wouldn't divulge any information because that would completely ruin a podcast, right? Yeah. Then we'd be right there with fucking mountain monsters.
I'd never talked to him until that day the podcast did.
And we don't want to be lumped in with mountain monsters because that's where we would have been if you would have divulged information.
Well, it's good. We're safe.
Yeah. Fuck you, Tyler. Anyhow, so that's what I'm saying. So when I was going into this, I'm like, okay, he's not going to be able to give out a name or whatever for me because he doesn't know me, right? And if actually talking to him, like when we were off air, he didn't even know my name until the day he was driving up, right? It was like Mike or Dan, Michael Paul or something like that, right? There was two names that he had. One was Michael and the other one was something. Anywho. But then, like, over dinner, again, we didn't really interact that much with him other than just, the normal greeting and, the interject every once in a while the conversation that he was having with your wife and Katie. But then when we come out here and we start recording, now the focus is on us, mainly you. And I was okay with that. Really. I was like, you know what, cool. Like, and it was, but when he was doing that, it made me think that I was right? Like, he couldn't research shit. He couldn't find anything. That's why he's not communicating with me, right? So I'm just like, cool. Like,
yeah,
this is going down the path that I expected it to go down, right? Because he got information from Katie or for your wife, and not intentionally giving it, but just leading questions, right? To gather the 100%. Info. So that is where I was at. And then shit got real.
Yeah.
Real fucking real. Like, so I was like...
The podcast had ended.
Well, so yes and no. When it started to get real is when he asked who is Doug to me. And I was like, well, live or dead. And he says, it doesn't matter. Well, I have an Uncle Doug. But when it's the podcast ended... That is when shit got really deep. It started to at the end of our podcast, right? Because obviously it was more focused on you and with your mom and the gifts that you see on our table up front. And I'll get into a little bit more detail.
My wife took the other lamp inside for what it's worth. She was like, this is too nice to sit out in the garage. So I don't get to keep that out here.
Do you remember Monsters, Inc.? Have you watched that?
Yeah.
All right. You remember the monster? It literally looked like
it does kind of look like it because it's a horseshoe shape
with
the bulb on top.
When he pulled that out,
that's kind of funny.
That's what I thought about was that show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great gift. I'm not making fun of the gift. I'm just saying like that where my mind is usually at.
Right.
I was like
related to something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then, sorry, Brian. So then after the podcast, so it really started up towards the end of our podcast, and then Brian and his wife and Katie stepped outside. So then it was just me and Gregory. And that's when stuff for me got real, because it went from just, if you remember when we started out the podcast, I said, well, some people look at this as kind of like a parlor trick. It's a whatever type thing, it's a parlor trick. And then we're sitting here and we're in here talking, and I'm not going to get into all like the real personal stuff, because it was some pretty deep stuff. But he brought up a couple different names, and the one name was related to Doug earlier, and he brought up Michelle. So Michelle, or my Aunt Shelley, recently passed away probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, but she was married to Doug. I always called her Aunt Shelley. but her actual name was Michelle. Okay. But not very many people knew that, unless you're part of the family, so that was like the first thing. I was just like, okay, well, you're not going to get that information from, just Joe Schmo down the street. And then he was like, who is Brad to you? Mm-hmm. I started fucking crying. Mm-hmm. Very like cold chills right now just talking about it. Mm-hmm. So to our audience, Brad was a Marine who I served with in Iraq in 2005, who was tragically killed in line of duty that I was present for, and I've had a lot of survivor's guilt since 2005 for this. Mm-hmm. And that is a name that only a handful of people, like you didn't even know about until after the podcast, and I was talking to you about, my conversation with Gregory. Mm-hmm. So very just small amount of people, handful of people, literally a handful of people understand what Brad means to me. Mm-hmm. And to throw that name out, dude, that was like, it was kind of like being bitch slapped from the other side, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Because some of the advice that he some of the things he talked about that he knows that that I've been struggling your inner demon struggling with, mm-hmm. he spit him out. And I was just like, fuck, man. Like, parlor trick or not, he's either really, really, really good. Yeah. Or he literally has a gift. And I truly believe he has a gift.
I was going to say, we got to keep it real on this podcast, on the show, whatever we want to refer to it as. And I was going to say, what's your opinion of Gregory's skills? Is it legit, plausible, or no way you think it's real?
Again, and Brian and I, from the very get-go, stated we will keep it 100%. Mm-hmm. I'm no bullshit. If we think it's bullshit, we'll just fucking call it bullshit. This is 100% legit. My personal view, 100% legit.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a hard time arguing a different perspective on that one. And, like I said, to caveat at the beginning, could you call out names? Sure. Could you call out... It's just the ultra specific things that are too random to call out that wouldn't have hit home, that you'd have been like, what are you talking about? But it was made perfect sense. Like the shell, and it just all added up.
Yeah. And so
really well.
Yeah. And we could sit here, when he first threw out, he's like, well, when did you have a maroon car? Well, red's a pretty normal vehicle color. It's pretty popular. We're sitting here freaking looking at a red Corvette in front of us, right? Mm-hmm. So it immediately, to his point, it's going to make you think of if you had a red car or not. He could have said black, and I still would have been like, oh yeah, I guess I did have a black car. You had a blue? Yeah. I've been through a lot of cars in my life. I've had a lot of color. I've had every freaking color probably out there besides maybe pink, pastels, or whatever. So I was like, okay, that's just kind of like a leading question to make you think. Because there's a high percentage of probability that you had that color car. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I didn't really put a lot of credence in that question, or his response to that. But to your point, it was that one-on-one interaction. Yeah. Well, even for me before that. So towards the tail end when he was talking about you and your mother, right? You and your mom. Mm-hmm. I could see your physical reaction to that. So I'm like, this has got to be real, because you're not going to respond to that of just nonsense. You would have been like, okay, cool. Right. You would have played the game like, hey, it makes sense, or I can get it. But you wouldn't have had the emotional response that you actually had.
It was deeply touching. And, that's such a weird thing to say when you go into something like this. And really my mindset was, I don't believe this. Let me look for the cracks in the armor, and then we're going to have conversations around the cracks. And we did just ask general questions about kind of what Gregory thought about people that, weren't real mediums and were just, reading the crowd, or like I said, asking leading questions. And I think what I thought was really cool was his background, right? And I'm glad we started with his background, right? Went to seminary school.
Yeah.
It was that was going to be his full-time job. He wanted to help people, and then realized that he had this gift. And after he figured out what it was and how to use it, pursued it and now does it.
Yeah.
And I think that's impressive. Anybody that
yeah.
can take their gift and follow it, like they always say, you never work a day in your life if you're doing what you love. Like, man, prime example. And Gregory does do other things outside of that too.
Right.
But I mean, it's just incredible to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, fascinating. I don't know. You can, whatever other big word you want to throw out there just to describe something that is so intimate.
Yeah.
And personal. And I was actually kind of scared coming into this because you never know.
You and I
right?
both. I had a lot of anxiety going into this one.
Yeah.
I knew he was going to come after me about that piece, and I just didn't know how I was going to react.
Right. Because it's still raw, right?
Yeah.
And if you're still personally,
Still dealing with it, coping with it, figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with my shit since 2005, right? So almost 20 years now. Am I math right on that?
19.
Yeah, I'm close. I said almost 20, so I'm there. And I'm still struggling with my shit, right? And it's just like, if I can punch in the gut with it, dude, it was something.
Maybe it's the fact that Gregory brought his own water. I appreciated this from him too. He's got a still and makes his own water.
Yeah, I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's almost like making your own beer.
Clarifies your mind.
Yeah.
And apparently, I would be curious, and let us know what you think too, because we were talking about this, but we did the episode with Holly and Justin, and we kind of touched on crystals and astrology, and then Gregory's also really into crystals and astrology. So if that's something that you're interested in, like maybe we could pull those two folks together and have a group conversation about it.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing, an amazing episode. But I think what also would be cool with that too is if we can get Judd in here and have Gregory come up, and then we have Pastor Judd, and then we got Gregory, and then we just have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then I understand like this podcast is, mainly aliens.
Dude, we're two dudes drinking beer in a garage. We can talk about whatever the hell we want.
That is true. And if you don't think this is otherworldly, you're smoking some shit because... he basically is it's paranormal. If he's talking to spirits, which I believe he actually is.
It's a puff, puff, pass.
Yeah. It definitely fits in line with our show. Yes, we've had a couple of religious shows. But I think that's part of it too. I think religion plays a huge role into the paranormal and extraterrestrial.
Well, we talk about Diana Pasulka. We talk about Christopher Bledsoe. Like that's directly correlated and tied to that.
Yeah, and the three big questions we're always asking.
Yep.
Right? So where do we come from?
Are we alone, and what happens when we die?
Absolutely. So all you out there who are like, this ain't a paranormal show. Well, go back, rewatch some of our stuff, listen to some of our stuff, and you'll know that this fits in.
I don't think I've heard anybody say that yet.
They haven't, but I'm just cutting them off at the pass.
Okay, good.
It's one of those disclaimers, real small.
Got you good.
Yeah. We just put somebody on PIP tonight.
That is true.
Yeah.
We had ChatGPT write us a PIP.
She's going to be editing this, so now she doesn't know where it came from.
Damn, that's true.
I wanted her to think her dad was smart. Edit. Yeah. So anyhow, that's funny.
Anyhow, it was awesome. We'll see what we can do in the future with Gregory, maybe Pastor Judd. Hell, maybe we can get Diana Pasulka or Christopher Bledsoe on and do some kind of group religious UFO conversation. It'd be fascinating. But
hold on. I know you're trying to rush through this. Where are you at on this? How accurate? Like, obviously you had some, like, you never did tell me if you had just a personal one-on-one with him after when I was outside, just kind of.
No, we talked about some of his interesting clientele.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He sent me a text.
Nothing personal or to divulge anyone's personal information, but just some of the things that he gets pulled into. And I was like, wow, boy, I feel great.
Yeah. It was just like hypothetical. Like I may have whatever. And I'm just like, bro, lucky on you, but damn.
Yeah. Really servicing the people with that one. So
yeah. Everybody has their own desires and whatever, but hey, man.
Well, they need some kind of psychic help, but maybe a psychiatrist more than a psychic. I don't know, but
yeah, that might be true.
Something.
So, but all right. So you believe it 100%.
Yeah. And again, the fascinating part is And it makes sense. Like if I'm trying to think about what this would be like to have it for myself, one, I don't think I would want it. I don't think I'd want the responsibility. I'd probably end up in a psych ward. But just listening to his description of it is like, imagine standing in a big crowd and you're hearing everyone's conversation. And if you focus on a particular group, maybe you look at them or something else, you can kind of single out that conversation and pick it up a little more clearly. And that's what he was describing it as. And you're trying to pull out words and phrases and different things, but it's from a loud room of people. So I understand the difficulty in what he's doing, and it's not a precise anything, but the way he describes it and some of the things he said, it's hard for me to say that, no, it's not like Travis Walton, who needs paid the day that he gets abducted, right? It's that portion of it doesn't exist. So I have a hard time discrediting, the things that he said personally.
Yeah. And he came here voluntarily. Like he was not paid to be here. It wasn't definitely not a money grab. He came because he truly cared. Like he had, a vision or, spiritually, he was just called to come here and hang out with us and talk about
he
what
said
he does.
He didn't come up to do the podcast. He's like, I'm here because of your mom.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
And see, but when he said, I'm just like, because this was before everything,
again,
right?
What did he know?
Again, this is before everything. I was just like, cool. I mean, I would be here for Brian's mom too, right? If someone just said that she had passed just several months ago and I was trying to make a quick buck, right?
Yep.
So, but that's where I was at. That's where I was, not where I'm at now, right? Like I'm 100% believe that man knows what he's talking about. He does have some type of Holy Spirit running through him. And I'm very proud to say that he's actually doing it for good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people that would be like, I mean, it's just like with any type of power, right? Let's just call it a power, is you can either go do it for bad, nefarious things, or you can do it for good. And I truly glad that he's doing that for good, like to just make people comfortable either within transition, like he said, or what does my future look like? I'm, not really feeling myself, or I'm just kind of feeling down. Like it just even if it's, there's a part, like I say, I would say that what he told me was 98% accurate, but there's still that percentage that there might be off. And remember, he had us write down the word Keith. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to forget that because he's like, it may not mean anything to you now, but it potentially could mean something later in the future. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the last episode, you'll hear me say, I hope it's a big name, right? So let's just see if Keith turns into something.
Hopefully Keith is the CEO of a big brewery that wants to sponsor us, so this fridge can be filled with whatever that is. Yeah,
and then I won't feel as guilty taking Brian's beer out of there. But I did replace it tonight.
That is true. You did.
I did replace.
You did. So I don't. I would love to have more conversation with Gregory and Christopher Bledsoe and Diana Pasolka, but I'm curious to hear what you think, Mike. Like, as it ties to UFOs, specifically like Christopher Bledsoe seeing these bright objects in the sky. Do you think what Gregory is doing is that same thing, or you think these are two separate, I guess UFOs, aliens aren't angels? That's kind of what Bledsoe alleges that he thinks.
As of like right now, I believe they're two separate things. I believe that Gregory's more into the paranormal side of it, what we would consider modern day paranormal.
Sure.
I think when you're talking about crafts and extraterrestrials and that's just a separate category. Mm-hmm. Now, it would be interesting that Bledsoe, what he's saying as being some type of angel being or godly being, right? If there was some way to like substantiate that.
Well, he said he was cured of his Crohn's disease after seeing whatever the first time.
Well, I need to go see him because that shit's incurable.
Well,
help me with my colitis.
Pretty sure it was Crohn's.
That's what happens when you get old. You pick up diseases you never had before. But anyway, I think if you're able to substantiate that, and there's like some, we talk about correlation, like it's a hot day, so I'm eating ice cream, but murders are up. Is there a correlation there?
Right.
Probably not, right? It's hot, so people are eating fucking ice cream. But
right.
I just think like if we got to that point to where because we're always looking for some type of evidence. And the thing that Gregory gave us was very personal evidence, things that only we knew.
Yep.
And that to me is enough to just, like I said, I got bitch slapped from the other side, man. Like my buddy bitch slapped me from the other side.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's all I can say.
You probably deserved it.
I guarantee I deserved it. Mm-hmm. And then like the gifts, right? So the ducks there that you see there, those are the ducks that he gave me when he first came, and I tried to debunk it. Those ducks were not in my Jeep.
Yep.
And then the shell itself, Brad was a mortarman. Obviously, you're not going to be able to find a fucking mortar anywhere. But so once he threw out Brad when we were in that personal, that made more sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the color of it, like, I'm not a huge gold fan, but I like the theory behind the
Maybe
aura.
That's you haven't met Keith yet, who's going to be our beer sponsor and fill the fridge, and you'll feel like,
yeah, I mean, we'll be financially stable when we can just quit our day jobs and just do podcasting and drink beer and play golf all day. Yeah. So, but I get when Gregory was talking about the auras, right? Different colors, different meanings.
Yep.
And gold meaning prosperity or wealth or whatever. That with, had he started with that part of it, like just the prosperity and wealth, I mean, everybody wants that. Mm-hmm. If you don't want that, then I'd like to talk to you, right? Because why? Yep. But, because like I say, if he would have started out on that, I would have been like, yeah, whatever, man. That's the typical, feeling everybody has. But then once you start piecing everything together and he throws out a certain name, that now becomes clear what that actually represented. It was, hey, like you may not remember, because in the Marine Corps, we never went by first names. It was always last names. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really learn his first name until after him and I, started talking when we were overseas and became a little bit closer. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had people in my platoon that I served with for 6 years, and until like the last year, I didn't even know they had a first name. It was always their last name. That's even out on the street. Like Wyatt, my buddy who comes up here, his name ain't Wyatt. That's his last name. I still fucking call him Wyatt today.
I'm not going to lie. I thought his name was Wyatt.
No. You know what it is? Michael. Yeah. But here we go almost 20 years later, and I'm still calling him by his last name. Huh. So that's what I'm saying. Like, so for me, when it comes to that with just throwing out the first name, I knew that name because it was very personal to me. So that was like the gut punch. And then you start making, okay, the round, it makes sense. Brad, Mortarman, round, So then I start piecing it together to your point. You start taking these little things and you can start drawing a line to wherever you want to go.
Yeah. But are you drawing the line to wherever you want to go, or is he doing it? I think that's
the question.
Things, that's what.
And that is the question.
Try to be conscientious about. And I even believe Gregory, but I think that's the hard part. And it's like the UFO stuff we talk about. 9 out of 10 things we see are BS. So how do you differentiate the one that's not?
So I think in this instance, I think that I did basically draw the line to these objects, but it wasn't because I had misinformation. It's because I had the fucking information, like the real information.
Yeah, that's important.
Like if you have factual information that very few people know, you're going to draw a line, but it's a very factual line. There's no deviation, right? It's not like, now if he said, hey, Brian, when it was like, means nothing to me. I don't know. I mean, I know Brian, but Brian, that does nothing to do with a Brian, right? So again, but the name Brad is such an arbitrary name. It's like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not a name that I would throw out. It's like, hey, do you know Jim? Hey, Dale. If you're at a NASCAR race, you're going to throw out Dale. You know what I mean? So it's like,
just real quick, because this was just on TV and I forgot how funny it was. The movie Superbad. You remember McLovin getting the ID and they're like, McLovin, like, what the hell did you pick that name for? why couldn't you pick something more common? He's like, I could have picked Muhammad. And he was like, why the fuck would you pick Muhammad? Most common name in the world, bro. Get with the times.
It is true. It is true. Yeah. So but that's what I'm saying is like,
yeah, I get it. The line was there. He didn't have to draw it because he already did.
Absolutely. Yeah. But again, if he would have thrown out anything different, if there would have been any other names, whatever, I would have never drawn the line that I actually did. Mm-hmm. I would have never followed the path. Like whatever he was trying to lead me down. And that's what's crazy. He didn't know me. Mm-hmm. So he never knew I served in the military. Mm-hmm. He sure as hell didn't know I had a friend named Brad who was killed in 2005. Mm-hmm. He would have never known that shit. So now we're gonna get into this other crazy stuff. This is where it gets interesting. So we had the podcast. Well, hold on a second. So after the podcast, how did you feel? This is important.
For a couple days, just drained. Like I was just like you had just taken a really hard test, but like a couple days worth of tests. Like it just reminded me of being back in college during finals, and you're finally done, and it's like, I want to go out and drink beers, but I'm also just like, I need an evening of just like rest and mental relaxation. But it lasted a couple days.
Yeah. So typically after a podcast, when we turn everything off, Brian and I were drinking beers, we're listening to the jukebox or vinyls or playing guitars, whatever. Like we're then talking about the podcast, how we felt it went, and then, what can we change differently? That's a typical post podcast.
Yep.
This podcast, once everything was done, we sat on your porch.
Yep.
We both stared out into the darkness, didn't say one word to each other for at least 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at him like, dude, I am fucking spent.
Yeah.
Emotionally and physically just burnt out.
Yeah.
Like we typically don't call early nights. Mm-hmm. We were done. Out. And to your point, it wasn't until yesterday, today's Thursday?
Yep.
We recorded on Sunday. It wasn't until Wednesday, so yesterday, that I actually felt like myself. Like I had energy. But the weird thing about it is I actually felt like weight was lifted off of me as well. Like I just felt more relaxed. I felt more of like myself. I didn't have like all this just burden.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was just like when he's talking to the spirit world, because we talk about paranormal where, apparitions or ghosts or whatever you want to call them, they can use your energy to like, they drain batteries, they do whatever, they drain. Like I really feel that was an hour and 20 minutes of nothing just but our energy being just ate up.
You remember too, and this is kind of an interesting note for people who couldn't see the rest of the room because like my wife was here and Katie was here. And if you remember, like I've got kind of a living room set up in the middle of the garage, and they were originally sitting there, and Gregory was like, I need you to move. You're an amplifier. I want you to move behind where I was sitting. So like both of them were like right behind me, and he's like, you're an amplifier and you amplify other people's energy if you're in line. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But
right.
God, dude, like legit, I felt physically, mentally, emotionally drained for a solid 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Was that subject matter? I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but man, you would think the next day you'd be back at it.
Yeah. I mean, the subject matter, it was deep, it was very personal.
Yeah.
So that's when I obviously have the emotional toll.
Right.
But just physically beat up, like drained.
Yeah.
Like
weird experience.
Like it was, yeah, absolutely. And, you watch these paranormal shows and they talk about, they're draining my energy. Mm-hmm. I think that shit's legit. I think it's very plausible. We'll put it in that way. Cause if that's the way they feel after every, like ghost hunt or whatever, God, man, I slept good that night. Kinda. It was like the first time that I felt like I was so exhausted. I
didn't sleep that good. I slept really good on Tuesday night of this week because my buddy Jason, shout out to the All Things Blues and Southern Rock podcast, who's having Joe Bonamassa on this week, by the way, which is gonna be badass. So check them out if you haven't. They're on Instagram and all the social media aspects. But he got his tickets to go check out Tesla. I don't think I got home till like 1 o'clock in the morning. And that night I slept like a champion.
Yeah, good for you. But yeah, I mean, that's good. Yeah, but emotionally, dude, I was just spent. So, and that's leaves like how does he do it? Because we asked him, how do you turn this off, and he doesn't. And how I know
how could you deal with that?
I don't know, man. Like I just personally, man, I can't describe how just drained. And he's doing he doesn't shut it off. It's just constantly going 24/7, 365 for how many years now, right? So it's just I don't know how he does it. Yeah, he doesn't drink. He drinks distilled water. So I mean, he's just
treats it as a gift, man.
And I really truly appreciate that. I'm amazed that he's able to transition from the spirit realm to our now world so easily and not just be in the fetal position somewhere, just grabbing your head and saying stop. Yeah. So the interesting thing. So the next day, Monday, Gregory texts me and says, "Hey, can you talk?" I'm like, "Yeah." So head into the office. He calls me. He's like, "Hey, so Michelle wanted me to tell you the story about, how she has really bad OCD and how she was always constantly moving stuff back, right?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I never saw that side of Michelle." So I went to the source. I called my Uncle Doug, who lives in Pennsylvania. Okay. I'm like, "Hey, weird question." Gave him some backstory. Obviously, it's still pretty raw. His wife just passed away, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Did Aunt Shelley have really bad OCD?" And he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, this." He's like, "Yeah, she did." So my uncle's buddy, his best friend, would come over all the time and just move shit. And Shelley could be gone for the day and come back. And as soon as she'd walk in, bam, she would notice something's missing. She's constantly moving stuff back to where it goes. But again, that's something that's so fucking personal. And Gregory can't reach Doug. He doesn't even, he knows Doug's first name. Who you don't reach out to, right?
Yeah.
And then to know that's not something that somebody's probably posting on social media.
Right.
So that again is just another just snippet of just how personal and how accurate he was. Now, I didn't know the information, obviously, like I just said, but I called the source, the guy that was married to her
Makes
for
it even more
20 plus years.
You didn't know it, right?
Yeah, that's why I was like, I
you
don't
didn't
know.
even know that.
Yeah, I didn't. I just thought, I was like, I don't know, bro. Is this,
Yeah.
And even after the Sunday we had with him, when he called, I was still in that phase because I think we were going through the 5 stages, right? What is it, the 5 stages of grief type thing? Is it acceptance, process, whatever it is? I don't know. I was still processing.
I'm buying if you're selling.
It's all cool, right? So I was still in that stage of still processing. So I was in the yes, I believe this stuff that he had said, but there was still parts of it that I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But then when he called me on that very next day and just gave me a random fact about a family member that I didn't even know, and it was 100% legit. Sold, brother.
Yeah.
100% real.
Yeah. Unique experience, man. That's what makes doing this podcast so cool, right? 1 week we're talking crystals and astrology. 1 week it's religion and UFOs. Now it's, mediums and psychics. And it just takes me back to why we even started this thing in the first place, just because this shit's interesting to talk about.
Absolutely.
We like drinking beer and we like interesting subject matter. So,
and
I love it.
And I never, ever wanted to sit down with a psychic.
Yeah.
A lot of me was just scared of what they were going to say, right? Like, "Oh, you're going to die in 2 hours,"
Fear of the unknown,
type
man.
thing. Yeah, it's fear of the unknown. Absolutely.
Oh my God. Well, that's actually really funny. It's straight Final Destination. What would you have said if I was him, I would fuck with people and be like, "You're going to die in 2 hours." It's like Final Destination. Don't follow the truck with the loose pipes on the back. Like
Yes.
every time you're on the road, you're like, son of a bitch.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, man. I really don't. That would have been
the nefarious activity you're doing.
absolutely. Yes.
That's me. It's a good thing I'm not a psychic.
Thank God.
That'd be
Because
terrible.
that's exactly the shit that people be out here like spending their whole 401ks and shit on weird stuff, and then
Don't follow cement trucks.
yeah, thank God he's not doing that. But yeah, so that's where I was at with this entire thing. But I encourage anyone who is interested in who needs closure in whatever. Like Gregory's there to help. Like I think that's when I would say like I felt lighter, like a piece, like a lot of weight.
Sure.
Like I truly feel that he helped me cope with something in a way that like therapy and medication and all that shit, whatever the VA wants to pump you, couldn't fix.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I say like, I just felt relaxed. I don't know if this is what relaxed feels like, because I haven't been relaxed in over 20, almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. But if that's what it felt like, I didn't mind it. I wasn't mad at it. Mm-hmm. It felt weird, different.
Yeah.
But I wasn't mad at it. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have an interest, if you're looking for closure on something, Gregory might be able to help you out.
Yeah, helpmegregory.com. And then he's also got Facebook, and I'm not sure what his handle is on Facebook. Do you know, Mike? I know we also set him up with Instagram while we were here.
Yeah, Katie set him up with Instagram.
We might have to tag that on this episode because I have no idea what it is. But I do know the website is helpmegregory.com.
I'm trying to look it up real quick because I don't know.
Yeah. But and while Mike does that, a reminder for everybody out there, Instagram, Otherworldly Encounters, Facebook as well. We're on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell your friends about us. Hit us with all of your questions, your comments, your feedback. Still looking for some beer suggestions. I will give the shout out to Brewdog. The Foundation's a pretty solid Pilsner.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It just, we just got these tonight, so they're not like super cold.
They haven't been in the beer fridge long enough.
Nah, but I mean, for a lukewarm beer.
Have you heard about their brewery is like, so their rooms at the brewery in Groveport, I think.
They have a hotel.
Yeah. And like the rooms look the brewery. You can bring your dog. They have shower beers, like a beer tap in your room.
Yeah. It's legit stuff.
Yeah.
Free advertising apparently.
America.
Tonight.
All for it. Did you find Gregory's
Instagram? He is Sanderson Gregory.
Okay.
And it's got his smiling face as his photo, so it should be easy to find. So follow him. Get over him all the man. We'll probably talk again. I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll talk to him again?
I don't know. He probably knows.
That is true. I'm saying, like, would you reach out to him and say, "Hey, let's sit down for like a legit one-on-one"?
I don't know. I'm curious. So it's Labor Day weekend this weekend. We're getting together with our family over the weekend, and I'm curious to talk to them and get their feedback.
Yeah.
I know I was texting with him some, so yeah, I don't know. There's a good chance. I really like, he was cool to have on this podcast, super nice guy, and man, it's hard to debunk what he tells you. So I think it's legit.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's legit. So you think we did a pretty good recap?
Yeah.
I think so. So like Brian was saying, please like us on Facebook. It's Otherworldly Encounters Podcast. Or is it just Otherworldly Encounters on Facebook? Either one, you can find it there. Something just flew in my eye. That like literally like felt like someone just took a nail and poked me right square in the eye. That was weird.
Well, that's what you get for not knowing what the Facebook handle is.
I know. And then Otherworldly Encounters Podcast on Instagram. And then we also are on YouTube. So here's the deal. All right. We're at 31, I think, 31 current subscribers or subs, the kid lingo today. We need to get to 50. So we just need 20 more people to just subscribe so we can start doing some live entertainment, like we talked earlier. We'll come up with some weird stuff, you know. And then in our next episode coming up, well, we don't want to talk about it because we don't know if it's going to actually happen. Well, we can talk about like the theory around it, I think. So if you all remember, about a month ago, we had a show on cryptics, and we talked about space penguins, right?
Motherfucking Mitchapalooza.
We're having a motherfucking Mitchapalooza.
Once a month. I feel like that. It was just fun.
It's going to be once a month.
Wild ass bullshit that's out there.
Yeah. So once a month, we're going to have motherfucking Mitchapalooza. That's what we're calling it. And we're just going to talk about weird shit. Yeah. And obviously it's going to be recorded.
It's a lot of pressure on Mitch.
There's a lot of pressure.
He's got a lot of tails out there.
I don't know if he's going to be able to top
Mitch,
the space penguins.
High, lofty expectations here.
You have the space penguins, and you have the giant
that got like
I still
leg
think
sweeped.
I'm pretty sure he said it was a cockroach.
Centipede.
Didn't he have one about gnomes too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have He's got
a lot taking place.
Yeah. I mean, he came up with some. We talked about some that were just whatever, right? But I really dug the space penguins.
It's fun. I would say those are all fun and funny campfire stories.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that's exactly what those are.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, that's yeah, they were good.
Yeah.
They were good. So yes, so we don't know if it's going to be this next episode coming up. Like I say, we're just recording midweek right now. This video will be coming out on Sunday. Yeah. If you're watching this right now, it's now Sunday. But then we record our normal podcast either on Sundays or Mondays. I have been releasing the videos a little earlier than the actual podcast, like on Spotify. But we'll now be releasing those on the same day, which would be either Thursday or mainly Thursdays, potentially Fridays, depending on what's going on. Mm-hmm. So again, if you're listening to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of those other platforms, make sure you like and download the episode. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe. You hit the little subscribe button, make sure you hit the little bell up there, and it'll let you know once we post something.
Yep. Give Gregory a follow. Check out his website, Help Me Gregory. If you're into music, all things blues and southern rock, great podcast. Again, they got Joe Bonamassa on this week.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
until the next time, keep your mind open and your eyes on the sky. You never know what's going to fly by.
And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.